So what if I told you that every Sunday morning you spent grinding through the admin, identifying what you're doing for the week, those calendar conflicts, the meeting prep, the meal planning, the family tax logistics? What if all that just vanished? Not because you hired a PA, not because you finally got more disciplined, because you decided to use AI instead, running in the background whilst you're watching TV.
Yes, that's a bold opener for 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, mate. So welcome to CTRL-ALT-DEV, where we press Control on the hype, Alt on the narrative, and Dev on what's actually happening in tech. I'm Paul Rhodes.
And I'm Sean Sale. And today we're going deep on something that has generally changed the way we both work. Claude Cowork. And if you haven't heard of it yet, you're about to have one of those moments where you just can't be interested. The before and the after line in just how you think about running your week.
Yeah, so today is episode 22. The last one was a two-parter. And if you've been with us since the start, genuinely thank you. You'll know we've just wrapped up a 3-week episode retrospective arc. We look at where AI was when we launched this show. We looked at where it is right now, and we also looked at what it's going to look like if we fast forward 10 years to 2036. So that arc is done, and today we're about to start something new.
The next 2 episodes are a deep dive exercise into Cowork. No overview, no hype, none of the here's what it says on the landing page stuff, specific tools, real use cases, honest verdict. And we're starting with Cowork because frankly, it's had the biggest direct impact on how we actually operate week to week.
Yeah, and we've got a cracking listener question to kick us off. We've got a full deep dive, like you said, Sean, on Cowork. We're going to look at the use cases, the risks, and the comparison with alternatives.
Right, grab yourself a coffee and let's go.
So, quick roadmap, episode 22. This is part 1 of a 2-part series, as we've just said. And the core topic is Claude Cowork, what it actually is, what we use it for specifically, where it shines, where it has limits, and how it stacks up against the competition will all be covered.
So listener question first. It's a really honest framing of a problem, I think. A lot of people listening will recognise this, and then we'll get into the deep dive. So what are we covering today then, Paul?
So yeah, like you said, Claude Cowork. What is it? What we use it for specifically? So real world, we've always promised to deliver from the trenches, so to speak. We'll talk about where it shines, where it also has limits, and how it stacks up against the competition, because there are alternatives out there, and we've done our own research before we landed on Cowork, so we'll just share that as well.
Yeah, so the listener question first. It's a real honest framing of a problem. I think a lot of people listening will recognise, and then the deep dive, and then, as Paul said, the 3 news stories.
Yeah, and I think the MCP story that we've got at the very end in the news section has probably got the longest tail. It won't get the most headlines this week, but it's a signal that matters most if you're thinking about where AI is going over the next 18 months.
So how are you feeling going into this one, Paul? And more importantly, Paul, how has your week been?
So yeah, genuinely, it's been a brilliant week. It's Easter break, 2 weeks off for the kids, although they're not exactly kids anymore. My wife's also a teacher, so she's off. So it's a lot of like juggling business and family, really. So, and it should have been chaos, but then I realised that Cowork is doing the job for me in the background. It's doing a lot of planning that we'll talk about. So, which is as good a segue into the topic as you could engineer.
Yeah, love that keyword segue. Okay, so let's get on with the listener's question then, Paul.
Yeah, so this week's question comes via LinkedIn. It comes from a founder running a professional services business. They've got roughly 12 people. Most people are client-facing, and it's project-based work. And they wrote, I'm drowning in admin. I've tried every task management system going. I've read the books. I've done the delegation frameworks. I've had the conversations about working on the business rather than in it. Don't know if that sounds familiar, Sean. But the bottleneck is always me, reviewing things, planning ahead, making sure nothing slips through the gaps. Is AI automation actually a realistic answer for someone like me? Or is it a solution designed for people who already have dedicated ops staff and 3 weeks to set it up?
Right. And I want to sit with that question for a second because the framing is incredibly honest. The trap with most AI productivity content is it's written by people who have already solved the time problem, and they're describing the solution from the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And the how I got organized advice is always written by someone who's already organized. The person deep in chaos, deep in the weeds, doesn't have the time to read or implement a 12-step framework.
Okay, so what's the honest answer?
The honest answer is, and it is realistic, but the mental shift that makes it work is stop thinking of Cowork as another tool I have to actively open and use, and start thinking of it as a member of staff with a very specific written brief.
Okay, so framing is everything. A tool you have to actively open every morning is obviously friction. I get that. It competes for your attention compared to a scheduled task that runs automatically and delivers output before you need it. That's leverage that compounds.
Yeah, and the analogy is imagine you hire a brilliant PA, and on a Sunday afternoon, they sit down and you write them a detailed brief and say, here's my week. So here's my calendar. Here are my priorities. Here's where everything lies. And you say, do this every Sunday at 7 p.m. And then you receive the output Monday morning. No chasing, no remembering, no context transfer.
And that's not hypothetical anymore. That's exactly what Cowork is.
Yeah, and crucially, you don't need ops staff. You don't need to write any code. You need to just get clear on 2 or 3 administrative choke points in your week. You need to be able to articulate them in plain English as instructions and then let it run. And actually, the process of writing those instructions down itself is invaluable. Most founders have never documented what they do every Monday morning. The documentation exercise alone, it surfaces the things, you can stop doing entirely.
So you figure out very quickly what's habit versus what's actually necessary.
Yeah, right. It's exactly that. And half of it you can stop doing. The other half, Cowork can do. And that's a really compelling ratio.
Which is exactly what we're about to demonstrate. Let's get into the deep dive now. So the podcast for today is Claude Cowork, how AI just ate your admin.
Yeah, and I'd caveat it with admin asterisks and everything else you possibly do in your life.
Yeah. So let's set the scene, Paul. For the past 4 years, the dominant mental model for AI has been this. It's a very smart engine crossed with a very capable writer. You ask it a question, you get a good answer. You paste in a document, you get a summary. Fine. That's generally useful, but it's incremental.
Yeah, it's like having, I guess, like a well-read intern on permanent standby. It's not nothing, but it's not transformational.
Right, and Claude Cowork is categorically different, and I mean that precisely. Not as a marketing language, because Cowork is an AI that has access to your file system, your calendar, your connected applications, and the web, and it can take actions, actual, consequential actions on your behalf.
Yeah, so like take actions is a bit abstract, so we can make it a lot more concrete.
Sure, in traditional AI interaction, you open a chat, you type a question, it responds. The information flows one way from AI to you. You still have to do the doing. Cowork breaks that model. It can open a file on your computer, it can read it, it can make changes, it can look at your Google Calendar, as Paul said, identify a conflict and surface it in a summary. So here's my week, optimize it for deep work sales and delivery, move or challenge anything low value to maybe later in the day. It can visit a company's website, extract relevant information and drop it into a Notion document, all without you opening, copying, pasting anything or being present.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. It's going to be hard for the listener because we're talking about all this like theoretical stuff, but we will dig into like real scenarios that we've used in the past week. But I think the piece that I think is genuinely underrated, is the scheduling. You literally, it's not that you just do this thing once, or actually there's a lot of things we would like to do regularly, but we just don't have the time. So we don't even start it. So, you don't even actually need to say, run it Sunday at 7 p.m. It will suggest it. It will actually say, is this a scheduled task? Would it make sense to run this at the end of every day at, say, 6 p.m.? But you can prompt it and you can say, I'm trying to do this task and can I run it every Sunday at 7 p.m. or every morning at 6:55 a.m. or whatever suits you. As long as your computer is awake, it runs.
It might be something simple as what we're going to feed the kids this week. And you literally plan ahead or, with Cowork, say, what do you suggest we eat? It's got to be a healthy, balanced diet. And what are the ingredients I need to get from Aldi or Sainsbury's or Waitrose? So the output is waiting for you before you need it, as Paul said. And that's fundamentally a different relationship with information that most people have ever had before. In my world, here's add list to our software. What is the development revenue cost this week versus a target? Where am I off track to generate the £50,000 we need per month?
Yeah, spot on. And I think that mental model that you've just described is what we really want to push on listeners. So don't think of Cowork as a task to do. Think of it as the infrastructure that you configure once. It's like your broadband. You don't think about it every morning. It's just there. It just works.
Yeah, and the key to making it work is documentation. Writing those instructions down clearly and specifically, which most founders have never done for their own admin sequences, because why would you until now?
So I think we can get specific, can't we? We can look at a first use case, and we can look at like Sunday morning.
Yeah. The admin graveyard. We've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah. So I think I like to think every founder has some version of this ritual. I don't know if you do, Sean. I don't know if it resonated when we spoke about it offline, but I can tell you what mine was, and it's quite embarrassing. And also it's an element of like, if I'm honest with myself, was I doing it every Sunday is another thing, because it's about doing it consistently. It wins the day, doesn't it? So my ritual was I would sit down with a black coffee. I don't know why that's important. I'd sit down with a coffee and I carved out 90 minutes. The truth was, if I did it properly, it probably took more like 2.5 hours. I actually quite enjoyed the task and it felt productive. And what I would do is I would just simply work through my week ahead. So like most founders, business owners, salespeople, my diary is full of meetings. So what was happening was I was looking ahead to the calendar using Google Calendar. I was looking for the clashes, because there's always clashes where a repeating meeting was put in and then something's been booked over the top. We've all got appointments booking software, and it doesn't always get it right. It's like it's in a different calendar, so it didn't see the clash. So it finds I'd go in manually, find the clashes. I'd work out what prep I need. So my belief is every single meeting I attend should have a written pre-call plan in Notion, and it just covers off who am I meeting, why am I meeting them, and what's the goal of the meeting, and what are like a handful of questions to ask to get the conversation going. So effectively, it's an agenda, attendees, objectives, and context. And then what I do is I check through the actions from the previous week. So if you imagine in a week, I was having sometimes 9 meetings a day. Every single meeting needs a pre-call plan. Every single meeting requires time to attend, and every single meeting produces actions. And that one thing that was just a piece of admin was, okay, those actions now need to get into my to-do list and need to be prioritized. Not everything needs to be done this week, but it'll have dates. So I checked for the previous actions, and then anything that hadn't made it onto my to-do list as a direct result, I would manually move across. And effectively, that was just planning meetings. And then what I would try and do is go, okay, what about actual work? Where do I actually do the important stuff that's not urgent? And the repeated habit I was finding was I was getting to the end of the week and my to-do list was growing. It was not contracting. And actually the stuff that was really going to move the needle in the business was never planned. So that it was never scheduled. So I never got round to it. So in the end, is my business better off for that week of work and all that energy and that effort? It's more, rather than a hard metric and saying, yes, because we did these strategic things, it would be much more, well, I met these people and there's potential work there, or there's potential relationships to grow. So you're familiar with like one-to-ones. Not every meeting is a sale, is it? Not every meeting is a prospect or a client meeting. There's lots of internal team meetings. So that's a bit of a brain dump as to where I was, if that makes sense, to give the context of the challenge I face. And honestly, was I doing that every week religiously? No. When I did it make a difference? Yes, 100%, because I just felt like I could go into Monday morning mentally prepared, knowing what my week actually looked like, and I'd address those things. So that's what I was doing manually.
But that in itself, I mean, how often, I could probably honestly say that I do not plan my week ahead on a Sunday morning, which as you rightly say, consistently, we should be doing that. And a busy week generally means fishing through notes from many different meetings, doesn't it?
Yeah. And now, how long does all of that take?
So go on then, Paul. Share some more insight. I'm intrigued. I know I'll be doing this Sunday now.
Okay, so gone is the scheduled is the manual work. So what I've done is I've scheduled a task that runs every Friday. By the time I wake up, before the coffee is done, they'll have a summary of the week ahead. So all of the meetings, all of the pre-call plans are created, and all the conflicts are flagged as a to-do list, and all my actions from my previous meeting are now loaded automatically and appointed against priority and due dates and who. So it actually also assigns stuff to Erin and Pam in the team. And it does all of that analysis while I'm asleep. And basically, I wake up and I have one document that says, here's your week ahead. And what it's done is it's looked at Google Calendar. It's looked at Notion. It's looked at my emails. It's looked at various things like data points to pull it all together.
And just for the listener, and I'm going off topic here a bit, but when you say it's looked at your calendar, are you pasting the information from the calendar into Cowork, or is it actually going?
That's a great question. No, so the way it works is, and I really like the way that Claude does this. So Claude's Anthropic. I can't even say it. Cowork is now a new product from Anthropic. So if you use the desktop app, you get chat, you get Claude, and you get Cowork. So you start to give it a task, you explain what you're trying to do. This is all, I don't even type, like, as you know, I use Whisperflow. So when we talked about giving it instructions, I don't want the listener to believe you've got to have a perfectly organized prompt. Mine is a literal brain dump of like, blah, 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 blah. I need to do this. I think of things. You have a conversation with it. The way that Claude typically works, or Cowork as well, is it's like multiple choice. So it will read through it and it'll go, okay, it sounds like I need to connect to your Google Calendar. So it uses an MCP, which is a technical integration, but effectively you just click connect. So it's not like you have to go some integrations portal and you have to go and find and do certain things. As you naturally converse with it, it'll say, okay, well, I need to connect to Notion. So click this connect button. It uses OAuth, which we're familiar with, so secure protocol. It's now connected to my Google account. What I quite like about it is it doesn't automatically connect to your entire ecosystem. So it still doesn't have access to certain things in the Google workspace. It'll say, oh, I'm doing another task. Would you like me to connect to your Gmail now? So I haven't given it the earth. But yeah, it's a really good question about how does it integrate. It's literally in a natural conversation. A button appears in the chat and says connect. So there's not loads of setup of going, oh, I think I need all these integrations and opening up your ecosystem. It's on a needs basis. It will prompt you. It's a single click. And yeah, fundamentally, as I did this task, I think it got access to Google Calendar and Notion were probably the first two. And what it also did is it showed me how actually simple it can be. And then what I've done since is obviously you can edit any scheduled tasks. And now it was created. What happens is you start to get the first version, and it's never right. It's never perfect. We've had some funny instances of what it produced, but it's a really good start. And then all you do is each week you review the output and go, well, it would be great if we could do this, and you iterate. So you go in, and again, you don't edit the task per se, the big prompt. You talk to it and tell it you want to edit the scheduled task through conversation, and it updates it. So it's very conversational. This is not a technical tool. This is a productivity tool on steroids, because we've spoken previously about agentic AI. This is give me a task and I'll go and perform it. That is the key difference. Yeah.
So listeners, the consistency is the key thing here.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a real win. And you know, I say this about myself all the time. I am naturally chaotic in my planning, in my thought process. I mean, listeners who've listened for a while will know that I am chaotic. So if this can work for me, I'm fairly certain it can work for anyone, to be honest. So yeah. And I think like Cowork isn't chaotic. That's the thing, is it's regimented and it's just programmed. So, you know, for me, every single thing, it checks against the same logic. The data changes that it's connected to, that's the difference. but it doesn't miss the 9:30 that clashes with the school run. It doesn't forget to check the meeting that was rescheduled Wednesday afternoon.
And consistency makes the system reliable, doesn't it? So unreliable systems don't get used, as we know, and reliable ones become load bearing.
Yeah. Would you like to hear a second use case?
Yes.
One that's a bit more personal and family oriented.
Yeah, because I think for the listeners, I think this one is more for everyone's benefit.
Yeah. So we're a family of four. Basically, I feed 4 adults. It's the way to look at a teenager. So I shop and I feed for 4 people. I told the team about this other day and we had giggles over it. But I was like, this was a real world thing that I was doing every week. So my ritual is Saturdays my son plays football, my daughter works. Sunday mornings, I would intend to plan the week, just as I described. Part of the next stage of my planning was, okay, I really, really like to cook. So what am I going to cook for the next week? And we have kids clubs and we have football practice and ballet and tap and point. There's all sorts of stuff going on, even without my wife's social life. So basically, some meals need to be really quick. Some meals need to be, or I can take my time over them. And I really do like to take my time over cooking. So fundamentally, the trap was I need to plan next week's meals. And I have about, it's not a brag, I don't think it's a big number. I've worked out I have 14 recipe books. So what I would do is I would take one of these recipe books a week, sit down with the calendar on my phone. I would write out on a whiteboard what was happening in the week. Then I would flick through the recipe book to look for something that I liked. And I would basically, pick a recipe and put the page number. So it was just the evening meals. And then what I would do then manually is we use an app called Bring, which is like a shopping list app. You tick. Okay. It's really easy to add stuff and tick it off when you're in the supermarket. So with the success of Cowork, I sat there and thought, this can be automated. Like it's not something I enjoy. I enjoy the cooking. I don't enjoy the planning. So, and it sounds trivial compared to business operations, but, stay with me on this because I think this one actually makes a broader case to me. So I've just described what happens with a busy family with their calendar and, building a shopping list. So this would take me about 45 minutes to an hour sometimes, and it would be every week. So now I have a task that runs every Sunday morning. It reads the family calendar and specific calendars in Google Calendar. It cross-references with a couple of Notion pages. So I have a Notion page of 14 recipe books. I have a Notion page, this is really anal, of exactly what's in my cupboards, which I capture with Whisper Flow, and it organizes into nice, neat tables. It then goes through and it uses almost like reverse meal planning, which is, okay, I'm going to choose recipes where you've already got 75% of the ingredients. We can give it dietary preferences. We definitely want to have a meat-free night.
Just to interject here, what about if you've looked back for the last 12 months and you've gone, we've spent so much money on shopping, because we all know, as you say, with 4 adults, especially the kids, they eat twice as much as we do, don't they? So you look back and you say, gosh, we spent on average £200 a week. Do you look at the recipes and go, how can I save money?
I've definitely done it from an economic thing, definitely, because one thing I've found is if you go to a recipe book and you pick out, say, 5 different recipes, typically everything's new. Like you're buying new ingredients. You might have a few staples, but, okay, I need some meat, but I might need a spice I've never heard of that I need to go into this specific recipe and stuff like this. So we were facing a few things that made me really do this. One is it's embarrassing to say I was throwing away food. So I would buy stuff, and by the time I came around to do it, I'm a stickler for use by dates. I know that's really bad, but if something's like 5 days out of date, I'll probably throw it rather than eat it if it looks bad. So there was food waste was number one. The second thing was, why are we going out and buying 5 different recipes from scratch economically? Why are we doing that? So this process is just called reverse meal plan. I didn't even know it existed. It's obvious once you hear about it, but it's what have you actually got? And the other thing that we kept saying is, don't buy anything for the freezer. The freezer's full. that was the thing. Don't buy it. We can't fit any more in the freezer. The freezer's like full of all, and it's typically like the processed rubbish. It's like, but it's the easy, quick wins, isn't it? The things that you can just chuck in the air fryer or the oven. So with this, we've now run it for a couple of weeks, and the reality is, we've cleared out air freezer. We've actually got. It's probably more economic from an energy point of view, in the fact it's not killing itself every day to keep things cold. But it's this thing of, we buying less. So what it was really, I didn't ask it to do half the things, but one of the things it did is it said, okay, here's all the things you need to buy. Then I created a list called staples. So I put in what I need to buy every week regardless, like the perishables and stuff. Yeah. So then it goes in, and then the secret was it went in and loaded everything into Bring, which is the app. So I wake up on a Sunday morning, I scan over my weekly meal planner. It tells me what I'm eating on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I open up Bring, and it's got all the ingredients in there ready to just go and shop. So again, the doing I currently do is I then go around the supermarket and do the shop. Now, do I enjoy that? So there was a conversation at the team thing where, well, why isn't it just down it to like a delivery service, as in like, you know, a Tesco or something? And I'm like, because I don't want to pay twice the amount. That's on me. But it is this thing, and the first one, I think you're exactly right. Because we're only shopping for our staples, and we're only shopping for the meals that we can already do 80% of the ingredients. I think £200 that you muted as a shopping bill for 4 adults is around about what we were spending. We went to the shops, and it came up with a budget in the plan of what it thought it would be, and it was £86 for a weekly shop. Now, I think, I'll be totally honest, I think it was just over north of 100. But I know we bought something that was £12.50 that was not in any of the lists. You know, it's the classic middle aisle. Like, I need a scuba suit or something. But if I took that out, I was like, oh my days, it's not actually that far. I was thinking, there's no way it's going to be 86 quid. There's no way. So we fed our family for the whole week. We've had really good meals, and also variety, because I think one of the things is you get stuck in, don't you? If you have a Thursday night football, you know, the go-to is a 15-minute thing that you eat every Thursday night. Yeah. But it's a massive, it's really interesting.
But you saving £4,800 a year just because you're planning, you're being consistent. Yes, you might have some football evenings where you might have to do a shorter recipe than maybe one that takes 2 hours, but understandable. You planning ahead, which many of us don't do. You and I could probably take on that TV show next. One where we go in people's homes and we
just get Cowork and build your own little meal planner. It's not rocket science, though, is it? Like these are principles, aren't they? Because like one thing we've been preaching about when we do our consultancy is we'll teach you the principles. The principles won't change, but actually what changes is tactics. So today we're stood here and we're talking about Cowork. In 6 months, I might not be using Cowork at all, or I might have moved my meal plan into a different service or whatever. But fundamentally, the principle of if you plan your meals and you go and shop for those meals, pretty much that's all you need, plus some staples, you will save money. Like, so it was driven by an economic thing. I'm like, my daughter's going to university. We need to find extra income in the house. What's one thing you can do? And you look at your grocery bill and you go, do we need to be spending that amount of money every single month on groceries? And even worse, are we then consuming all the things we're actually spending? And the reality isn't. We're either storing it in the house and never using it, or worst case, and this is horrific to discuss, but we're throwing it away, and that's shocking to me. And it's not acceptable.
No, and we use Gusto, and I think the reason why we use Gusto foods is because they generally sort of suggest how much ingredients you use, and you don't waste, but we still waste it because generally speaking, we don't plan like you mentioned on the Sunday. We're not sitting there going, actually, Freddie's at football on a Wednesday, so we probably can't get the chicken out the freezer. Therefore, then the freezer and then of course then the chicken goes off. So you're right. It's all about planning, and also my brother he's got a lad at university as well, and all he's saying is, you know, it's very, very expensive to pay every month for him. So I was going to ask you to do a task at the bottom of the notes for this podcast. If you could just write down that, because you mentioned Bring, and was it the app?
Yeah, we use Bring. Yeah.
But just write up that workflow so that because I think that's been one of the most important case studies we mentioned so far, because we all have to shop.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like trivial, and I feel stupid stood here talking about how I've used it for meal planning, but oh my God, 52 weeks of the year I have to do this, and sometimes a year I do even more. But I think what I realised was if it's 45 minutes every week minimum, that's 39 hours a year. That's basically an entire working week is spent meal planning. And what I do know for a fact, I know this for a fact, if I fail to plan my meals, I have takeaways. And a takeaway today is so much more expensive than it was. And there's a myth of like, oh, you know, so-and-so ones are like 20, 30 pounds. They're not. They're more like 60 to 80 pounds for a takeaway for 4 people. So like, that's your weekly shop.
And McDonald's is about, for 4 people, well, we've got 5 in our family. So McDonald's generally is about 50 to 60 pounds in delivery. So you're right. It's ridiculous we're doing that because we're not planning. And as you rightly say,
and especially when you realise that what you enjoy, this is for me personally, but I really enjoy cooking. I got like, you know, without asking, but, you know, I got a new wok for my birthday the other month. I got like a really extremely super sharp knife. I've learned I got a new knife. It's like, okay, I'm 47. I'm at that age where I just really like having music on, having a beer or wine, I love to spend 2 hours cooking. The slower, the better. And then that's what I want to spend my time doing. So I want to spend my time cooking for my family and entertaining my friends and getting people round for a meal. I don't want to spend it planning. And so, and again, what's really good is it comes up and it came up the first time and it came up with like a meal that I wasn't that fussed about. So do you know what I did? I just reran it. It just gave me 5 new completely different meals, and I was like, "Yeah, perfect." So
and just before we sign off on this, so like let's say tomorrow, so on a Sunday you're going to do your planning for the week.
Yeah.
Do you use the same meals the week after, or you alternate? Because you did sort of suggest you can alternate it, but are you going to go back to that week 3 or week 4, week 2?
Well, my intention is, so this is a really good question. So my intention is there's 14 recipe books that it knows that we own, and it comes up and it says, you know, you're going to do this from, I don't mind naming them. So one of them's like Bosch. So from the Bosch book, you'll do this recipe on page 88, right? So if I see a repeater, I can not just rerun it. I can tell it, don't give me a recipe that you've presented to me in the last 6 months. You know, this iterative thing is once you get the consistency there, it's never done, but I'd rather spend 45 minutes re-prompting it once every 6 months and getting the gains. Now, you still look over it. Like to say I've eliminated it from my week is incorrect but it took it down to 5 minutes. You see what I mean? It's the human in the loop review. That's why I wouldn't send it to Tesco to go and auto deliver it because I couldn't get anything turn up on my door. So this is a human in the loop, really.
And you mentioned, Paul, I'm still going out, we're staying on this one still. You mentioned that it knows what you've got left, say, in the shelf. So if you've got a spice and the spice.
Yeah. I literally anally went through, you know, we use Whisper Flow, 6 minute. This is so embarrassing to say. I did one Whisper Flow, less than 6 minutes because it was one thing. And I literally pulled a drawer out and dictated what I could see.
So you can see what.
That's how I did it. It took me 6 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
So then it's in Notion. So I have like, I think the pages I've set up are what do we buy every week?
Yeah.
What are the recipe books? What is in our cupboards? And then, and then it creates a meal plan and it has previous meal plans to go back on.
You're not being as anal as saying I've got 200 grams left of.
No. Yeah.
But you could do it.
Yeah. You could do. I did a recipe this week where I used mozzarella. And we knew that we didn't have any, so we just manually added it to Bring. I was like, it's like not the full quantity sort of thing. I know it's a scrap of mozzarella, not what we need. So I think, I didn't expect to spend so long on meal planning, but I think it's a universal thing, though, isn't it? If you don't plan your meals, you generally don't have the ingredients to cook something nice. So therefore, what do? You do either something that's totally processed out of the freezer, or you don't cook at all. And that's like, you know, the cost of takeaways, to me, takeaways when I was a kid in the 80s was a birthday, or going out for a meal was a real treat. And the culture I've bred my kids up in is takeaways could be 2-3 times a week. Is at one point it was just because you like it's laziness,
well,
or ill prepared. You haven't planned.
And it also
it's lack of a plan, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but it came from COVID because it was a treat because you couldn't go out. But anyway,
I was like this before COVID. There's a reason you got a personal trainer, Sean, and I have.
So third use case, we're moving on, right? Third use case.
Sorry, we'll wrap this up. So
daily briefing then, Paul, because this is the one I want the founders to really lean into.
Yeah, so this again, like, I can stand here, hand on heart, and say I've just completed this morning. So another thing is where I have my weekly plan, but obviously that's a moment in time, isn't it? That's like what the week ahead looks like. Then we boil down to, okay, the daily plan. And what I was doing was I've tried everything. I've used like notes on my Apple iPhone as like to-do lists. I've used Google Keep. I've used a to-do tracker like Motion. I often really like pen and paper. And again, the tasks that I would complete would be look at my calendar, look at my important tasks according to my to-do list, and kind of bring it all together into some sort of schedule, and to say, this is what I plan to complete today. What this daily briefing does is it repeats exactly what the weekly plan does, but the night before. So it's the same day. It's like 6:55 a.m. It runs almost an identical script, but just for the next day, because things may move in the calendar. Something that was going to block out the whole day might have been cancelled. So it literally runs, and I get a daily briefing that's a lot more like checklists. So it's in Notion. I tick it off as I go. What's amazing is because my to-do list has now been migrated to Notion, it actually links to things like, it will go, you've got this meeting, you've already got the pre-call plan. Here's a link to it. So it's just, I'm literally looking at something on my phone, and it will say, meeting with Sean to discuss X. I click on it, and it's created a pre-call plan. And it's also done things like, even though I know you, Sean, it will do, go to your website, it'll go to LinkedIn, and it'll go to Company's House, and it'll work out what size of business you are, what you need. So it does like an element of prospect research. But then equally, it'll talk about, well, what's the potential for this meeting? And because it would go back through Notion and find previous conversations, it might even tell me, this is the 10th time you've met Sean, and you've talked about these things previously, so there are things to address. And it's just incredible. So yeah, it's a daily briefing that I refer to.
Classic prioritization framework, but applied automatically, as you said, based on your live data, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's focused on the big non-negotiables, is the priority piece in it. So you know how I talked about never doing the important stuff? It's got that lens of, yes, you've got all this other stuff going on that's important, but urgent because it's happening today. These are the things that you need to do today to refocus and move the needle. And that is about properly stacking. The way I just thought of it in my head, and I am obviously not as important as this, but like a prime minister must wake up in the morning and somebody hands them like, this is your daily briefing of what's happening today. So it can include anything. So one of the things the team talked about is, well, Paul, it could get you to just tell you the one top story from AI, or what you can do it. You can flex it to do whatever you want to do. The principle is, would it be of use to the person listening to have a report every single day that tells you about your day ahead and what the rocks are? That's fundamentally all it is. And it can look totally different to me, because the beauty of all this is it's tailored to your kind of goals, your personality, your framework. So
and the pre-call plans.
Yeah, so the pre-call plans are like the agenda. So when I'm on a meeting with somebody, I probably shouldn't say this, but I have, say, Teams to one half of the screen, and I have my pre-call plan open in the other. So I can still see the person talking, but effectively it's that agenda, it's that questions to ask. I got trained in a thing called Sandler Sales System years ago. I am a massive advocate of it. I don't really talk about it ever, but it has this concept of an upfront contract. And it's literally like, what are we meeting for? How long have we got? What does success look like? And how do we wrap it up and agree next steps? And if you do that on every single meeting, suddenly there's a purpose to it. And so it's not a script, but it's an agenda, and it's reminding me to execute the upfront contract.
Yes, and that quality of preparation applied consistently to every meeting, not just the ones you've had time to prepare for, as you said. It's genuine commercial advantage over competitors who are still winging it on the tube.
Yeah, completely. And I for 14 years I've been winging it. There's some meetings I turn up to where I don't have a plan, and that doesn't happen now. So the proof will be in the pudding in the next 6 months. But I believe this is a game changer. It sounds so stupid, but to be out principles again, to be able to turn up to a meeting with a plan versus no plan, which one do you think is going to grow the business? It's an obvious thing to make, but I believe there's a lot of people like me who were turning up to meetings because it's that time already, and they had a mental plan, but they didn't have a written plan. That's the difference. It's the written plan. Yeah. So should we talk about the fourth kind of Cowork scheduled task that I've built, which is the overdue task scanner? Would that be of use? It runs every Thursday afternoon. It looks at everything in my project management system and flags what's either going to miss a deadline, is already overdue. So it's not just a list of prioritized brief on what I need to do about each one. It's this is overdue, this is who it affects, and here's what needs to happen to rescue it.
Because the problem with every task app ever built is they surface everything equally. Reply to Dave. It's visually identical to submit VAT return by Friday. Same font, same weight, same colour.
Yeah, and the overdue scanner has context. It knows the states, it knows the dependencies. It's like an action brief, not a list, not like a brain dump or a list dump, really.
And then plan Friday.
Yeah, so the final one we'll talk about is just every Friday at 4 p.m. Cowork does a weekly audit. So this is what has been planned versus what's actually been completed. And I think one of the things that we don't do as business owners is actually look back at what we have achieved. So, and I'll be honest here, some weeks that's genuinely humbling to actually see, yeah, your to-do list has still got 1,000 items, but here's what you did this week. And that reflection is huge.
It doesn't flatter you then.
It absolutely doesn't. Yeah. It says 17 things were planned this week, 12 were completed. There's 5 outstanding. 3 of those 5 have been outstanding for over 2 weeks. Here's what's at risk. It is uncomfortable data, and it's exactly the kind of uncomfortable data you need to improve. So, yeah.
Because the alternative,
you're right. It's not plain sailing.
Well, the alternative is every Friday ending with a vague sense of it's a busy week without actually knowing whether the important things have moved forward, isn't it?
Yeah, the audit removes self-deception, and once you've had an honest Friday audit, your Monday planning gets sharper. And what's really interesting is you can feed the Friday audit into the Monday planning, so it will learn the lessons of where you effed up in the previous week to kind of go, well, this is just unrealistic. So, it makes you a lot sharper, I believe.
Okay, so there's one more use case I want to make sure we get on the record because it's slightly different. It's not a business one.
Yeah, and I think this kind of touches a little bit like the meal planner, but it's just a family planning one. So this is the one that gets the biggest reaction when I describe it to people, really.
So go on, Paul.
So every Friday, I love my Fridays, it runs alongside the morning briefing. I basically get a page of potential family weekend ideas. So Cowork has a list of my subscriptions. So we have things like, there's a lot of services, I don't know if other people are like this, but like Revolut, Simply Health for healthcare, they all have incentives and they all have offers all the time, like O2 Priority. We belong to like the National Trust. So what this thing does is it looks at our discounts, being frugal again, checks the weather forecast, looks at the family calendar, and it suggests a range of options from free to low cost. I sound really frugal, but I give it like a weekend budget of what I'm prepared to spend for the average weekend. And it'll do things and it'll say, this will take you over budget. This can be all done. But last bank holiday weekend, we did a free treasure trail around Worcester City on Friday. We went to cinema with discounted tickets through a membership. I got an IKEA discount voucher, which was incredible. Went to IKEA. Not my choice, my wife's choice. Went to an outlet village, had another 20% voucher that was in my emails that I didn't even know about. We did like 4 things across a bank holiday, and every single one was, sourced automatically from stuff we're already paying for. That was the thing, is we just overlook it. We was looking for the new, what's more exciting. So yeah, that was the concept for that, is to go give me ideas so I don't have to start from scratch every time.
That's generally really impressive, because the thing that actually kills family time, isn't it? Especially for founders like you and I, is decision fatigue. You've made 1,000 decisions during the week. Sunday morning arrives, and last thing you have capacity for is, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? The standoff, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I am very much like, I don't mind. What do you want to do? And, you know, an hour later, we're still not out the house, or we haven't got a purpose.
Yeah, but whereas now that friction is gone, the options are there. You just pick, don't you?
Yeah, and again, because it's conversational, the options are genuinely, they are good. But what they do is they spark other ideas. So I'll read it and it'll just go, oh, that's nice, but I don't want to go there. Actually, I thought of this. So, you know, but because it's specific, it gives you specific then ideas as well. So I'm not letting AI run my life and saying, Paul, you have to go here. But it's like, I think decision fatigue is a really good way of looking at it. But it also means that, you know, one of our constant things is we don't use our National Trust membership as much as we should. But every time we've used it, we've had a great day. Do you know what I mean? You don't even have to go in the houses and stuff, the gardens and stuff when the weather's nice. So it also, one thing I haven't touched on yet is it takes into account travel time, knowing where we live, and it also knows like the average duration. So it will then diarise it. So last weekend, it was all in the diary. So all we had to focus on as a family was leave by 11 a.m. That was it. It's just effortless.
Yeah, so it's not replacing the family experience. It's removing the logistical overhead that gets in the way of the experience.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And it's the right frame for co-work broadly, really. It's not about replacing your judgment. Like I said, you can ignore it. It's not about replacing your relationships or your creativity. It's about clearing the friction so things can actually happen. Yeah. So I guess let's be honest, because we promised honest takes, and that means addressing the concerns properly, not just waving at them. We should talk about risks.
Yeah, go on then.
Okay, go on then. So the first risk is security and data governance, isn't it? As always, you're giving an AI model access to your calendar, potentially your file system, potentially your email. Before you do that, you actually need to understand what you're agreeing to, who holds the data, how is it processed, what are the privacy terms and the data retention policies. So I'm not saying the answer is bad. I think Anthropic is very serious about this, but you need to read and understand it before you hand over the keys.
Yeah, especially if you're handling client data or financially sensitive information or anything that sits under a confidentiality obligation. The question isn't, is AI trustworthy in general? The question is this specific configuration compliant with my specific professional obligations?
Yeah, and the second risk is trust without verification. The whole appeal of automation is it just runs without you watching it, but you cannot just set it up and disappear, especially at the start. You know, I spent the first 2 weeks checking everything Cowork produced before I fully trusted it. So it's almost like a confidence barometer, isn't it? It's got to kind of increase as you go. So not because I expected it to be wrong, but because I knew that I needed to like iterate and calibrate it. You know, is the logic right? Is it doing what I actually meant? Is there anything I missed in the instructions?
Yeah, same approach you'd take with any team member, I suppose. You don't hand them a project and vanish for a month. You check in, you review your outputs, you build trust over time through verification.
Yeah. And the other thing is the third risk, I guess, is automating the wrong things. So not everything, despite what I've said, should be automated. Some of the things that look like admin are actually relationship moments. You know, a personal message to a long-standing client who's going through a difficult time should not be automated to sound like you. You know, be thoughtful, come from you. But I think AI is a multiplier of being human now.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about it being a productivity multiplier. I think it's a humanity multiplier, because if we take away all the faff, you've got more time to visit parents. You've got more time to spend it with friends and family. And cook.
Exactly. The filtered offer is this task information processing, or is it human connection? Information processing, automate it, of course. Human connection, as you say, stay present.
Yeah. And the fourth risk, and this is the one that snuck up on me, is dependency. So a few weeks back, the daily briefing didn't run. I'd actually set the schedule to a different time zone, and I genuinely felt disorientated. I didn't know where to start. Obviously, I can go back and run it, but it's this thing of, if it becomes a crutch, you kind of need to make sure that it does run every day, and that if you trip up, how to restore it.
And which on one level means it's generally embedded in how you work, but on another level,
yeah, you need to keep some manual instincts alive. You need to know how to think through your own week without the briefing, not as an everyday practice, but as a resilience capability. Don't let your entire operating rhythm depend on a single automated system failing silently. Yeah, so in terms of Cowork and an intro to Cowork, we've gone through, Sean, the opportunities, like some real world use cases that we're doing. We've also talked about the risks and trying to educate people. One thing that myself and Sean would love to talk to you about is a comparison. We'd like to talk about the alternatives on the market and give you like the full visibility of what you can do. It's not going to be exhaustive, but in order to do that, we need more time. We're very conscious, and Pete's really helped us with this, of not recording too long an episode. So we're going to do a part 2 on this. In part 2, we're going to talk about the comparison, and we'll do the deep dive into the news because it's directly related to Cowork and agentic AI. So we're going to wrap up today's episode and say a huge thank you from me.
And it's a huge thank you from me.
Sounds like 2 Ronnies, doesn't it?
It does.
For listening to CTRL-ALT-DEV, please like and subscribe. You can pick us up on Apple, Spotify and YouTube, and we'll be back for part 2 of Claude Cowork, where we're going to cover the comparison and the news.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.